Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about an ever-increasing interest in blockchain technologies. My name is Rebecca Hoffman, and I'll be your moderator for this panel. Currently, I serve as president for Blockchain for Energy, a consortium of major energy companies who learn, lead, and leverage blockchain technologies to bring about transformational change for the energy industry. We have an impressive panel today where none of them started in technology, but were naturally led to it and are now united by an affiliation with Blockchain for Energy Consortium. Our first panelist is Raquel Clement. Raquel has a distinguished 24-year career with Chevron in a variety of senior roles covering upstream, midstream, and downstream with corporate functions. She joined the Chevron subsurface digital platform in October 2020, where she is primarily engaged in digital innovation and software applications. Her role helps to better enable facilities and production operations across the company's value chain. She also serves as chairperson of the board of directors for Blockchain for Energy Consortium. Raquel holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA from Rice University. Our next panelist is Raj RAPAKA. Raj is a digital innovation advisor with EXXONMOBIL and has been with the company for 8 years. Over the course of his career, Raj has worked in consulting, marketing, commodity trading, and environmental management, but found his calling in business transformation. He is an avid student of business history and is passionate about recognizing, understanding, and leveraging the forces of change. He is the creator of the Self-Help Business Improvement Framework and uses his background in engineering, technology, and finance to ideate, advocate, and execute step change initiatives. Raj also serves as a board member of Blockchain for Energy. Our last panelist, but never least, is Thomas Cox. Thomas earned his 4-year degree in psychology in only 3 years, with honors from the University of Chicago. He began his technology career at Oracle and spent 15 years architecting, designing, and building database systems for companies across a multitude of industries. Thomas has pivoted from databases to human systems. He spent 10 years studying leadership, teamwork, and what he calls the problems of cooperation. 4 years ago, Thomas was recruited into the 4 billion ICO for EOS and was the principal designer of version 1 of EOS mainnet governance. Thomas has been focused on blockchain governance ever since. He chairs the working group Blockchain Governance Standards for the IEEE Standards Association and is now working with Blockchain for Energy Consortium as their governance expert, and we're so glad he is. So welcome all for being here with me today, and thank you for taking the time to be on this panel to talk about this important technology.
My pleasure.
It's good to see you all again.
Thank
Before we dive too deep into what blockchain can do, let me first ask each of you, what is blockchain to you? Raj, will you start us off?
Sure. We can go to the technical definition of blockchain, which you guys may heard regarding it's a distributed ledger validated by consensus algorithm and time-stamped and immutable with a cryptographic audit trail and stuff. But beyond that, getting past that, what does blockchain mean to me is really, I see it as a step change technology that really helps us, especially in the external facing space. It's a way for us to get to a shared reality, and in a way that other technologies before it didn't do it in a very efficient manner or didn't do it at all. And the one thing I want to say is, one, dispel the myth. It is not the same as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is to blockchain what email was to the internet. It is the first. Email was the first application for the internet, but it was not the whole internet. Just like that, Bitcoin is not the first. Is the first application of blockchain, but it's not the whole blockchain. We are at a point where we are around 1999, where the first few applications have come out, but the runway is long. And I see blockchain really playing a big role in getting to a lot of step change efficiencies in the way we interact in the external space from our suppliers, vendors, regulators, partners, contractors, banks, etc.
Thank you, Raj. Raquel?
Thank you, Raj, for that introduction. It's really good. I think it's one of the best I've heard. But to summarize, for me, it means transparency, digital trust, and removal of intermediaries. All the characteristics that blockchain is bringing. Some of those are the top three for me that brings the efficiencies to the systems that we have, and understanding that the possibilities are unlimited. Like, we're just starting to understand what it brings. But basically, the key benefits based on is one of the big ones is transparency. Is that allowing us to see the transactions happening, being able to go and search them back, to audit them back, and have a digital trust that this is happening is just outstanding. And that's what blockchain means to me.
Thank you, Raquel. Thomas, can you shed a little bit of what it means for you?
Yeah, so for me, blockchain is a new way of coordinating and cooperating across what used to be much more difficult boundaries. Like, used to be that if you have two companies who want to cooperate, they send each other invoices and quotes, and I've got my books, you've got your books, and then we maybe tortuously reconcile them every month or quarter or year or something. And then many staff hours are spent dealing with when all the books don't actually synchronize. Blockchain removes all of that. Now, there's a lot of technical work to make that happen, but once you've got that in place, instead of you and I having two ledgers we have to reconcile periodically, we got one shared ledger, one shared reality. And what people don't quite get initially is, instead of fighting over what's true, we start to have to be in a dialogue about what to do about what's true. So the finger pointing and a certain class of struggles just goes away and frees us up to actually work on what really matters in the business. And that is just revolutionary. And just give you one example. So Grant Thornton, big accounting firm internationally, they built a system that will let themselves initially and their clients take multiple divisions with completely incompatible ERP systems. And every time they do a transaction between two divisions, they've got this blockchain reality that's always correct. It's always up to date. They don't have to reconcile things. They have a single shared source of truth. Just imagine going, look at your current business and all the ways people fight over what the truth is, and replace that with, oh, no, we've got that settled. Now we have to decide what to do about it. That's what blockchain promises.
That's truly transformational, and I think that's why we get so excited about its potential. So
yeah, if you're not excited about the potential, you're not paying attention.
That's right. Or you just keep trying to understand the technology and not what it can do for you. So there's been an evolution of blockchain, and the technology continues to expand. We're seeing that in other industries. And even as it's starting to be relevant in the energy industry. So along with its potential, why use blockchain technologies in the energy industry? Let's kind of get into that. What are those potential benefits?
Want me to go? Oh, sorry, Thomas.
Well, Raquel and Raj will correct me, but it has to be things like speed to market, speed to coordination, speed of execution. That the time that used to be spent coordinating or trying to understand one another or trying to synchronize multi-party activities dramatically shortens. Now, the cost to get there is you have to harmonize the business processes, but once you've done that, your ability to execute just goes through the roof. And if you're competing with folks who haven't yet undertaken the revolution, you will beat the pants off them. And if they've got ahead of you, they might well beat the pants off you. So there's a race here.
So there is a competitive advantage to this.
Well, certainly being last has a competitive disadvantage. I'll certainly say that.
Okay, good. Raj, can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, I think Thomas mentioned a few things. I'll put it into two buckets. One is the appeal of blockchain, and second, the benefits of blockchain, right? The appeal is, some of the things that Thomas mentioned, the cost, the disintermediation, just a fancy word for taking the middleman out. We have a lot of intermediaries everywhere, from brokers to agents to banks to lots of middlemen. So essentially, blockchain allows you to connect supply and demand closer together, right? So take the number of people in between the supply and demand out, and that could be in various aspects, from lenders to borrowers, from producers to buyers to and sellers and stuff like that, right? So the single source of truth and the transparency contribute to the trust. The disintermediation and the accuracy and the removal of or reduction in errors and fraud contribute to the lessen costs. Then there's the automation piece via smart contracts, and that gets to the speed. And there's the efficiency piece around communication. When you have so many parties, the communication burden that is inherent, or the coordination burden and the consensus burden, all these are burdens that we don't typically put a dollar figure around, but those are the burdens that this one efficiently takes out. And then add to that, you have your security through your authentication. So you have a verification of identity and a validation of transactions. So there's a two element to it. And then you have the immutability and the timestamping, which leads to the traceability and the trackability of it. And so it's overall, it's a hyper efficient, well-designed system, and it translates into a lot of benefits, into lower overhead costs around FTEs, whether it is doing reconciliation or verification or whatever. And then you have the external spend, through the disintermediation contracts, greater accuracy, like I said, and then the contract leakage. We define contract terms better instead of having a 400-page contract and each term may not be defined. If you take the data and logic out of it and make it into a program, now you can debug the program. You can see which terms were not defined well. When does it bomb out? What cases are not handled? All that becomes much more easier. And the thing is, it's not just for the operators. It is for all the parties involved in this transaction. There's something in it for the counterparties as well. They get paid faster. Through their transparency, they can become a vendor of choice or a supplier of choice. And through this consortium, we are coming together to kind of get to the network effects, right? Exxon can't just interact with one supplier and we get the benefits of blockchain. The whole ecosystem has to be there. So there's a network effect going on. So it's a lot of things packaged into one, and I'm super excited about it.
It is a lot of things packaged into one, and that's why we all need to continue to learn and lead this and leverage this technology together. So Raquel, can you give us some kind of real examples of the benefits of this technology that you're seeing for Chevron and for what we're doing within the consortium together?
Yes, thank you. And good summaries, Thomas and Raj. Thank you so much for your words, because it preempts my speech. The word here is efficiency. The key bottom line here is efficiency. The amount of efficiencies that are still unseen, of the benefits that we're going to perceive just by not only in the back end of the office, in the office back end, but also in the fields, where operations. We had some early success already with a consortium, for example, in simple processes like water hauling, and the potential of using it in other areas. But going from a process that generally takes 90 days, 100 days, 120 days, in the best cases, to be able to reduce it to a couple of days or hours if we want to. That is an efficiency that is unseen. And it's not a big investment. We didn't need big investment. We didn't need to change the structures or modify things. That's the issue. The benefits here is coming not only for the efficiencies that you achieve, is the low cost of those efficiencies, the low cost that can be that we can perceive from those efficiencies. So this is a compounding effort, like Raj was explaining. It's when you see it exploding and when you see it applied across value chains, across the whole thing, not just limiting to one aspect, you will see the efficiencies are going to amount in so many ways that we're not even really able to quantify them. So it's really exciting, the possibilities with blockchain. But we have seen some specific cases now. We saw it in AFE balloting. We saw some of the cases where we see the potential of, as Thomas was referring, we are not wasting time in reconciliation anymore. We could see lifetime in the second how 10 companies were exchanging in real time, in our faces, what was happening, and everybody could go back and see what happened in the last 10 seconds. It was really exciting. So these type of projects that we're doing are giving us really good insights of what the future could look like. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Raquel. And it's exciting when you're actually doing and learning as you go. Thomas, can you bring some awareness even outside of the energy industry that we can, use and get insight from?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So two areas where every industry is going to find some benefits. One is payments and payment reconciliation and payment movement of value across borders. We're seeing the banking industry through R3 Corda and several other vendors come up with ways where instead of money taking, hours and days to move across borders, it goes in a few seconds. I had that myself. I had a subcontractor in China I was paying out of the United States, and I did a wire transfer first, and it cost me, 3-5% fee, and it was like 3 days, and it didn't work the first time, and it was nightmarish. And then I used a blockchain-based payment system, and it was there in about 5 minutes with no fees. And I was like, oh, I will never go back. I will never go back. And you wouldn't either. Identity is another one, right? The fact that people can be identified much more effectively with a single shared ledger rather than competing differentiated ledgers that have to be reconciled. Or even more than that, within identity, what about access control lists? Who's allowed to see this piece of information right now? Oh, I want to give Fred access for today, but I want it to expire. Well, how do we know that everyone got the expiration notice? Shared ledger, everyone's got it. And so simple basic things like identity, payment, authorization, authentication, marketplaces that disintermediate middle people. We're seeing this in agriculture. Grain chain is making headlines now. And they use Internet of Things to capture information about grain. The silo operator is no longer trying to talk the farmer down and talk the commodity buyer up and trying to make some sort of a split in the middle. They just record the data and they just have a flat fee. The banks love it because now their loans are secured against an asset that's on a ledger that's already reconciled. We're seeing in places like Guatemala, coffee growers are having their bank fees slashed while the banks are making more money because their risk is going down because it's a shared truth. We're seeing this again and again as industries adopt blockchain-based solutions that inefficiencies are going away, and the pain and the unpleasantness of those inefficiencies and the struggle to reconcile is going away, and that basically allows us to cooperate at a greater and greater scale and find new ways to compete on more useful things. I mean, I'd rather not have my competitive advantage be I can reconcile better than the other person, unless maybe I'm an accounting firm. I want my competitive advantage to be I've got better people and we're doing more interesting things and we've got better leases and we're more efficient in our internal operations. It's going to in some ways level the playing field, And in other ways, it's going to differentiate people who can adapt to a new reality from the laggards. I think the slowest 10 to 20% of businesses in this sector, as in every other sector, are just going to go out of business. They're going to get acquired.
So we've talked about a lot of things that were exciting. We talked about a lot of things that were almost, hey, you better pay attention to this or you're going to be left behind. So if it's so great, why isn't it already mainstreamed? What are these big hurdles that's happening, especially, we like to talk about our industry because we're in this industry, but let's talk about it because all industries affect each other in some form or fashion. We all need insurance, we all need banking, right? But what are these big hurdles, and how, when it comes to harnessing and reaping the potential rewards from this technology? Raj, do you want to give a little bit of insight from an energy perspective, and then we'll move through the panel?
Sure. I think there are several barriers to it, as whenever a new technology, a new concept is introduced, there's a lot of barriers. It's not a traditional technology where it's not traditional change management where people know what it's about, and now the question is, do you want to use it or not? There's it comes with perception, right? We talked about Bitcoin, and the first thing that comes to mind when people say blockchain is Bitcoin. It's great that they know something about it, but it's also not great because there's so much more to learn. So there's a perception piece you have to overcome. Then there's the education piece about what is it about and where is it in the hype cycle? Is it all hype? Is it vaporware? Are there uses, and where exactly do I use it? Because you can't lead with technology. You have to really break it down to the use cases for each of the people we are trying to sell it to. And that's on us. So we have to educate ourselves on what the possibilities are. We have to look across sectors to see what is going on in transport, what's going on in financial services, and translate that. We had to understand our operations, and we had to understand our organizations to see how they are structured, who are the decision makers, who are the thought leaders, and translate that into use cases. So there's a lot of education and connection that needs to happen. Then there's then obviously there's a change management piece and the commercial aspect of it. Okay, like, hey, if I adopt it, will I immediately get the results? No, I had to influence externally as well. I had to bring the people onto it. Then I had to see, how do I go about standards? You're going to get questions asked from a legal angle, whether smart contracts are enforceable. You're going to get IT questions on integration. You're going to get business questions around who are using it. So we have to solve a lot of things. So we have to do a lot of parallel processing before it's successful. And that's what is, and again, it's a challenge worth taking on because the price is so immense and the ROI is, so great. So we're taking on a lot, but at the same time, nothing great was ever attempted, or never achieved without attempting something. So that's where we are. But yeah, lots of challenges, but lots of opportunities as well.
Yeah, because a lot of people just go, oh man, that's too many moving parts and that just sounds too hard. I'm going to just wait for everybody else to figure it out, right? And that goes back to Thomas's comment about if you wait, you're just going to be that much further behind. Raquel, do you want to share a little bit from your perspective and from Chevron?
Yes, definitely education is going to be a big one that we have to overcome to start moving that perception. Is that concept of thinking of associating blockchain and this type of technology to one specific area, which is the Bitcoin. That was a way to get it out, But we need to educate. We need to educate our top management. We need, as Raj was pointing, we need to educate ourselves in exactly where do we want to point it, where do we want to point it. One of my watch points right now is that a strict necessity that we have of demonstrating value right now in something that is still forming, it's like asking somebody in the 80s, you have to demonstrate the value for the pizza industry on internet, there was no value in that moment. In the 80s, nobody would have thought about using, ordering a pizza online and how much that they would boom just by using internet. So it's one of the watch points that I have is trying too much to force it to prove value right now and cutting the real benefits of the future and harnessing that benefit just because we're shortening it a little bit. So that's one of the watch points that I have in the hurdles, is that we need to be cautious and how to manage that balance between letting it grow, keep growing it, and not hurting it because we're trying to make it a splash on the value right now. We have to be it's a watch point, not a hurdle, but it's a watch point that we need to have. And the other one will be the legacy system. The reason why we're not right now in preventing it is because the same conversation that we had earlier. We're talking about touching core processes, core things that we will affect, like potentially we have to link to ERP systems or probably replace some portions of the ERP system functionalities right now. That takes time. Even a single upgrading of our ERP system takes years, and we're just talking about the same thing. We're just upgrading it, and it takes years because our legacy system in our companies have been tweaked and upgraded and customized, and things are not easy. So we are in that process that the digital era is bringing us to that realization that we need to move forward and be designing our products in a way that our digital products in a way that we can move them in the future faster. We learned that from some of the companies. I mean, Apple is one of them, that we learned that we need to design in a way that we know that we can change it with the future demands easily, but we don't have that. Our systems, our legacy systems are still very much slow to move. And that's where one of the hurdles that I see that we need to overcome, especially in our industry. But I think it's in everywhere, to be honest.
So really what I'm hearing you say too is that our legacy systems are actually preventing us from being efficient, agile, and being able to adapt with the times.
Yes, it's something that we are changing right now, but it's going to take time to move to that. But yes, definitely there is some factors in there that are not helping us. Self-inflicted and inflicted by the tools, It's both.
Yeah, and some of it just organically happened over time as a reaction,
Yes.
and instead of being proactive. So thank you, Raquel. That's great insights. Thomas, can you kind of expand upon that and then also talk about, this inefficiency in our current ERP systems?
Well, I think our original question in this round was, what's stopping us from moving ahead, and like how do we overcome that resistance? And as Raquel pointed out, if you're the only person in your ecosystem with a blockchain, it's supposed to be a shared source of truth. Who are you sharing with? If it's just you, right? So you got to have at least one partner, and then at least one of you, maybe both of you, you're re-engineering your business systems to work with this shared ledger. Oh gosh, have you tried restructuring your business process? It's a lot of work. And so, we're really talking about the fundamental way businesses operate. So it's going to be slow. And examples like MetaLedger by Chronicled is really instructive. They had a federal mandate to track certain kinds of drug sales. They went to the drug industry with 3 years of runway, and they managed to squeak in it with a month to spare when they launched. And I talked to them, I've interviewed them. More than half the work was non-technical. It was getting people on board. It was working with SAP and Oracle and all the ERP vendors to build the hooks so that existing systems could look at this shared truth and use it and send data to it and pull data from it as appropriate. And it's worth it to them, but it took them years. And it was mostly political, getting people on board, keeping them on side, making sure that people understood what everyone else was doing during this rollout process and during this building process. And so we're seeing that today. Where I see most people getting in trouble is they want to go straight to technology, and they don't think about things like governance, and they don't think about building consensus at the board level, if you will, or at the business unit level, and making this part of the existing organizational change they're having to do anyway. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to be worth it. And you don't want to be the absolute bleeding edge first necessarily, but I'd urge you to be in the top third of adopters, because the second third is going to feel like rushed and not given a lot of choices. And it's like, well, sorry, the first third set a bunch of standards and made a bunch of decisions about technology, and nobody really wants to change that now. And oops. And now they had, several years, but you've only got maybe a year or months before they go accelerating away from you. Of course, the bottom third is like, what's going on? And I'd short their stock on the long term, I think. Not that I'm a stock advisor. The challenges are the challenges of cooperation and coordination. It's just we're using technology now. And of course, that always takes time. And people hate to change. I sometimes run into people who are very smart and very quick to change, and they get confused. It's like, why is everyone so slow to change? And I just tell them, go home, go to your kitchen, move the trash can to a new location, and tell me how much chaos and uproar comes from your family members or your housemates. It's like, why has he moved? It was fine where it was. And then they keep going to the old location, trying to throw stuff away. It's like, look, that's a trivial example that it's hard. All right, now turn that into the core operations of a business. Of course, it's going to be a challenge. And fortunately, humans are built for cooperation. We're built for change, just not super fast. And it does often bring up a lot of conflict and personality clashes and stuff. And, come on, that's life. So my exhortation to you is, do not underestimate the effort. Do not be last. And, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with a team. Yeah, build your team. And to my mind, a cutting edge consortium like Blockchain for Energy is exactly what every industry needs. Is kind of that neutral third party clearinghouse of ideas and technology and examples and pilots and stuff. And that will get you there. This blockchain game, it is less than half technology. It is more than half change management, personality management, relationship coordination, human stuff.
And that's truly what we're seeing through our findings, right? Is that it is not about the technology's not ready, but it's the change management piece. Raj, you sounded like you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, and Thomas made some great points. And the thing is, we are not even on the bleeding edge, right? So the other sectors are so far ahead of us. So within oil and gas, which as a sector is a bit lagging. So a lot of things, what we think as risky has been de-risked. And the applications are across all the sectors. And there are several industry, consortiums, in all the sectors. You have Mobi in automakers, you have Beta in transport, TradeLens in supply chain, Thomas mentioned grain chain, you have Alastria, now you have B3I in insurance, IBM Food Trust in food and beverages. The list goes on and on, the list of consortiums that each sector has, and everybody has, tons of participants. And the reason people are investing that time and energy and effort into this is because they believe in it, they see the vision in it, and a lot of them are much farther ahead than oil and gas. So Blockchain for Energy is our consortium in oil and gas, and in a sense, we ourselves are following and learning from the other sectors who have taken this leap of faith much farther ahead than we have. So it's not that the technical risk is much lower, and like others have pointed out, Raquel and Thomas, it's the change management piece, which is really the stumbling block. And at the same time, that's where once we are past it, I think there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained.
So let's move on to what kind of challenges does governance present, and how do we overcome these challenges? So explain a little bit more about why this governance piece is important with blockchain technology.
Yeah, it's easy to underestimate the burden and the importance of the governance of a blockchain system. Think about it this way: there's no super user, there's no admin, there's no one person you can go to put in a patch or make a fix or replace a lost key. Everything has to be a collaborative, cooperative endeavor. Like all of the major players have to agree which change is happening, what the timing of the change is, what the protocol will be for bringing about the change. Try to imagine a homeowners association meeting that never ends. It's kind of like that. Raquel's nodding. So
that's a scary thought. No.
well, yeah, it should be, because you're going to need, and the successful folks have told me this, that, they realized they needed to have a technical committee for technical questions. They needed a business committee for the business analysis stuff to merge business processes. They needed a change management committee to schedule stuff, because you can't just throw things into production whenever you want to. You got to know when to have it happen. And you got to have a steering committee to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And that's a lot of committees. It's a lot of staff time being eaten up. But these are the problems of coordination and cooperation. And so people underestimate that. They think it's a technology problem. They think IT can do it. IT cannot change your business processes. And if they could, you would not want them to. And so people initially underinvest, and it gets away from them, or they just give up. And you can't do that. So there's that in a nutshell is it. Another aspect, by the way, if you've got a small group and you want to get it bigger, is if you underinvest in governance, structure, process, and onboarding, your second tier adopters who are on the fence are like, yeah, well, blockchain, no blockchain, I don't care. I just like efficiency. Like, what do you got for me? If they look and they don't see in the governance system that their interests are catered to, that their interests are protected by your processes and your systems, they're going to go, I don't think I want to run my business on your system. Thank you. It's just a little too scary, which, by the way, is why Maersk's trade lens was in a holding pattern for over a year, is their governance was sadly a bit of an afterthought. They didn't think it through. Their own people admit this, that they lost over a year of market momentum by underinvesting in governance processes and catering to the comfort and the realistic concerns of the people they're trying to bring on board. So please don't underestimate governance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot about, we talk all the time in the consortium about how do we continue to mold and shape this technology and for the benefit of the member companies, and how do we not end up with a big tech company basically running the oil and gas industry because they have all the data one day. So there's a lot of things to be considered around as technology advances and how we're going to govern ourselves in that new world. And we can leave it to the policy and regulatory people. I know a lot of it will come from that, but also we can have a say as that's developed right now, and I think that's very important.
And if I may,
oh yeah,
Rebecca,
please, Raquel.
For me, governance is one of the reasons why we set up the consortium, the ecosystem. It's because you start talking about this before you start implementing the technology. So you have the conversation, you agree on the rules, and then is when the technology comes. You have to agree on your standards or non-standards, or what you're going to use to make sure that we are all aligned. And then is when okay, now let's bring the technology in the table. Let's bring the challenges and how we solve this, and how we translate what we agree into making sure that technology functions the way we want it to function. And for me, that's the key of the equation in blockchain is as I keep saying, it's different from a drone or from putting IoT in our fields. It's totally different from that. This technology has this human component that Thomas calls for. Is a big component of the human and the agreements that has to happen before. And for me, the governance is going to be a mix of everything on those agreements at the beginning, what is going to make it successful and achieve what we want at the end.
Yeah, and so let me add one more thing to what Thomas and Raquel said. And Thomas made a point around going fast, go it alone, and if you want go further, go as a team, right? And we are also trying to strike the balance between the standards versus the solutions, right? So one example is the trade lens piece of it. Other is, you can go with just the standards piece of it, like some of the other consortiums. And we're trying to not just educate ourselves, but also learn from history, right? What have other consortiums gone through? Where have they found successes? What is the model that allows us to go fast, at the same time open it up so everybody else can join without having that fear of not having interoperability or vendor lock or whatever it is. So I think this consortium really, that's one thing I see this consortium try hard to do, is strike that balance between speed, at the same time growing the ecosystem where everybody else can come in.
So I just want to say, what great conversation to start off about this technology. Raquel, real quick, end us with, if you could give advice to a company regarding this technology, what would it be?
Thank you, Rebecca. This is a good question because I have the opportunity to talk to so many of these companies trying to join the consortium. And the first thing is understand your journey, understand where you are in the digital space. And if you see that there's you are in that verge of having, hey, what is that next technology that is going to help me grow? Come and join us. Come and join the consortium. Come and join the consortium and start having the conversation, start developing the rules for the industry. And why not developing the rules for blockchain in the other industries too? So for me, it's key to start joining and enlarging our ecosystem. And please come and join us.
Thank you, Raquel. I want to thank our board members and our affiliates, Thomas Cox, for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about this important technology and how it will help the energy industry achieve the digital transformation that we're needing as we transition into a new era. So thank you all in the audience for joining us. I hope it was informative, and we look forward to talking with everyone again in very near future. Good day.